and then we're awkwardly just live.
Yeah, you gotta wait for like that buffer period
Yeah. Nope.
to actually acknowledge that we are in fact live.
No, I'm live.
Like we are right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 151, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch esports, see what's buzzing in this week's hot community topics, reflect on Overwatch League Stage 1, Week 4, and preview Overwatch League Stage 1, Week 5, as we are so close to the playoffs for the stage. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us live tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course, to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Edinar. And Ed, you know, we have kind of a lighter news week, which just means, you know, we're just going to talk more Overwatch League, because there's at least that going on. But we got an update on Baptiste. We had a Q&A. We have some really awkward comments in some of the Valiant videos and some other Valiant news that we are sure to get into. But how has this past week been treating you?
It's been treating me pretty well. You know, I did really well in my fantasy leagues. I beat you. So I got that. I wanted to go out and buy a crown to wear on the episode tonight, but I just forgot about it. And it would have been just awkward. But, you know, it's been a fun week. You know, lots of Overwatch to digest. You know, contenders still going on, so I'm kind of sparingly watching some contenders from here and there. You know, and then getting ready for the new patch that's coming in a few weeks.
Question mark?
And, you know, just enjoying that, you know, it's Wisconsin. It's in the upper 40s right now, and, you know, low 50s, and everything's melty. And so it's just a wonderful time of year up here where everything's flooded. But yeah, no. So how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. You know, it's been warm here too, but like it was raining earlier, and I was upset the fact that the rain couldn't just get rid of all of the snow. We still have some snow, but there is a lot of green. But it's just like it can't decide whether or not it wants to keep the snow or just get rid of it altogether.
Well, I mean, tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 50s. So I'm assuming the last little bits of snow are going to be going away, hopefully. But then that just means a lot of flooding.
Right.
And I'm not looking forward to that. So.
Yeah, I can already tell part of our backyard, like near the shed, is already starting to flood, and I'm sure it's going to get even better tomorrow. So, oh man, that's going to be interesting to watch. But let's go ahead and jump into the news from this week. So earlier today, we actually had a developer Q&A session on the forums, all revolving around hero number 30. That, of course, being the combat medic Baptiste. So, you know, there's really not like a whole lot of information here. It did kind of get divided in between just Baptiste lore and also in-game abilities, things like that. So, Ed, was there really anything with this Q&A that really stood out to you in regards to either some of the questions or maybe some of the answers that we got?
I mean, not really. I mean, there was a lot of lore. There was a lot of fluff questions. Like, what is Baptiste's favorite food? Does Baptiste have siblings? Like, okay, I get it. This is like some weird Reddit AMA that they just kind of pick and choose and then release it on their own site. A couple of things that were interesting that were bugs, like the exo boots being affected by hack and EMP. That turned out to be a bug that they're gonna fix. They addressed a lot of immortality field questions, being like, you know, it's strong and helpful, and they kind of they basically said they don't want to adjust like the health of the pack to kill it, because they want you to work as a team to take it down. So it's going to take more teamwork, gameplay, stuff like that. They went over why the immortality field is not an ultimate. And I agree it shouldn't be an ultimate. Yes, it's very powerful. But when you look at other healer ults, those are a lot different than this. And they take much more like people like I've talked to have always been like, okay, the immortality field, it prevents you from dying. I'm like, yes, it does. But if your entire team's at 50 health, you also need generally an AoE heal, a massive AoE heal, right, or another support ult to live once that's gone. So, you know, it's not, you don't need another ult or something else like that to deal with Zenyatta's ult or Lucio's ult or anything like that. So I think they addressed that pretty well. But otherwise, it was just a lot of fluff, which is fine. I mean, yes, they gave us more lore, which we've all wanted, but we got it in the form of text and we want it in the form of video. Preferably a feature-length movie. Just say. So, I don't know. What did you take away from it?
Honestly, it wasn't a whole lot. They did kind of go over the pronunciation of the name because a lot of people are confused with how to actually say it. So Michael Chu clarified that Baptiste pronounces the P in his name.
Baptiste.
Yeah. They also were talking about, like, what kind of led him to leave Talon. And the thought that I thought was interesting was the fact that he was trying to get other members of the organization to defect, but he was not able to convince anyone to actually leave with him. They also brushed up on Baptiste and Sombra in regards to, you know, what sort of working relationship those two had. And Sombra's kind of been keeping tabs on Baptiste even after he had left Talon. And, you know, you had already mentioned the Exaboot scene, which is a bug, so that should get fixed here very soon. But of course, then we got like this little nugget of information about Baptiste being expected to be ready for live servers within the next couple of weeks, which just so happens they announced earlier after this Q&A that Baptiste is set to release on March 19th across all platforms. So during the time on the PTR, we've seen Baptiste Ultimate basically undergoing a lot of aesthetic changes. He, of course, as a new hero, when he does hit live, will only be available in Quick Play Arcade and in custom games. So you're going to have that period where Baptiste is going to be disabled in competitive play for a short period of time. Now, that being said, Ed, obviously, you know, we've been doing a little bit of testing, and it's really hard to make heads or tails of what the meta is necessarily going to be, but I want to get your thoughts on what this is going to mean in regards to a potential chance at seeing Baptiste in Stage 2 in the Overwatch League.
I think Baptiste in Stage 2 will be used sparingly. You know, I don't think Baptiste is going to be your main healer or anything like that, because yes, Baptiste can pump out the numbers, but you just need a little bit more flexibility. Yes, they can heal, they can damage, they can put up their immortality field, but it's more like having a less mobile Lucio on your team. And basically the biggest draw to Lucio is his mobility and his constant AoE heals. I consider Baptiste more of a, if you do, I truly believe that with the changes to Moira, I think you could possibly see a more 2 healer, maybe 3 healer, Baptiste, Moira, and maybe a Zen. And then throw in 2 tanks. I don't know how I feel about shield tanks right now, but it makes sense. Like an Orisa and maybe a D.Va and Junkrat or Widowmaker, depending on what the map calls for. Because I think Junkrat specifically is going to be very powerful, especially on defense. So you're going to start seeing some interesting techniques, because I do think Baptiste does not kill goats. Honestly, Baptiste does not kill goats. But all the other changes that are coming in does kill goats. The changes to the nerf to Zarya, the nerf to Lucio, the nerf to Zenyatta, all that stuff gets rid of goats to some degree. I mean, there still may be maps where you run 3 tanks or you run 3 healers, but it's not true goats. So I don't know what kind of comps do you expect to see for stage 2, or heck, even in like your own comp games?
Well, I'm basically just going to grab a dart and I'm gonna throw it. I have no idea where this is going to even land, to be honest, because there are so many changes, and DPS really across the board has seen some pretty significant changes. So I would not be surprised to see like an increase of hit scan, whether it was McCree or Soldier, who both saw some changes. One just with more potency to Deadeye, the other being the damage getting reverted back to what Soldier 76's damage was before he got nerfed a ways back. But I do think that Junkrat and Moira are going to be seeing more play.
Mm-hmm.
And those have always been characters that have always kind of excelled kind of at the lower tiers of the game. So I'm really curious to see when that next Omnic Meta report comes out from our good buddy Switch at omnicmeta.com, how those characters that we're so used to seeing in like gold, silver, and I want to see like if we see a huge increase or just a steady increase when it comes to the higher end of play, because it's always kind of just seen like this very steep downcline after you get into like plat or diamond in some cases.
Yeah. One thing I've heard a lot of people say is how they think that the bunker defense could come back with, Baptiste, Orisa, Bastion, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that is Baptiste plus McCree equals shields don't matter. Like, McCree's ult is so powerful now. If you can get him inside Baptiste's immortality field and let him fully charge his ult, he's going to just melt through everything.
Right.
So, like, I don't think the bunker defense will work in lower tiers. I still think. I don't think it's a high-end tier strategy. It could be a cheeky play. It could be a play, Chengdu kind of already pulled it, just minus the immortality field. But, it's one of those things where we're just going to see interesting comps and interesting busters, as I kind of think of it, is if you need to get through, if they're holding strong on a choke point and you need to get through it, call in Baptiste. Baptiste will come in, throw it on the immortality field. You clear through that choke point, then you switch off Baptiste. And remember, everyone, a PSA. When you're playing Baptiste, the healing grenades do not heal you. Because so many people assume that his right click will heal you.
Right.
And it will heal everyone else, just not you. So if you're inside the immortality field and you're just spamming right click to heal everyone up, you're not getting healed yourself. So you're going to die real quick. So I don't know. It's going to be some interesting comps, I think. But Moira, Junkrat, Widow, projectiles could come back, really.
I can see that too. And it's also worth noting Baptiste, in regards to his toolkit, when it comes to your teammates, the positioning across the board is going to be drastically different to really any other hero that we've seen in the game. And it's going to take a while for people to kind of get used to utilizing that ultimate or actually stand in the safety circle so, they don't drop below 50 HP, things like that. So it's going to be an adjustment, not just because it's a new character, but just because of the toolkit in itself is just wildly different compared to some of the other things that we have available in the game right now. So I don't think that this is going to be like a Symmetra teleport type situation where we're just not going to see Sim after like her relaunch. Baptiste is probably going to be a lot more common, I would say.
Now, do have a question. So with the changes to Doomfist, because Doomfist got buffed, I don't know why. Doomfist was a viable character, just wasn't that viable in this meta. But they buffed him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Is Doomfist the new Tracer? Like, is he a better Tracer? He can get into the backline almost as quick, a little bit more powerful, has the knockback, like could be more annoying in the backline than Tracer really ever was, and you don't need the amazing tracking that you see from like Sebiobi, Striker, people like that. But he could be just as effective in the backline. So I mean, and he counters a little bit Baptiste's immortality field, because he can go through and knock people out of the immortality field. Well, you're not inside the field, you're dead. So, I mean, he could really do something like in the upcoming meta that's going to be out there. So, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I've only seen a limited number of Doomfist play on the PTR, and really the only introduction I had was with the Jane Pro Pugs when they had Blase on Doomfist and he was just destroying everyone. So I can't really use that as like the test of how good Doomfist is going to be, but you can see the potential that he can have. So I don't have enough information to kind of like make that comparison as of yet. But I will say, like, the disruption aspect of Doomfist, I feel like is definitely going to bring his pick rate up a bit, just because he's going to be able to create that separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just even being able to go in and get, like, the tanks to turn around and uppercut them in the air. Like, if Doomfist becomes a thing, I don't think Reinhardt will stay a main tank. Because, I mean, what good is a Reinhardt shield if you're being uppercut by Doomfist? So it could be more of a dive meta. Could be more Winston D.Va. I mean, you could get Hammond. Hammond got buffed, so you could start seeing a lot more Hammond play instead of maybe, let's say, D.Va or Winston. Like, because being able to create that barrier around while you're in ball form is a pretty massive buff to Hamster. And, I don't know, like you said, it's spin the wheel, stop it, that's the meta. And we won't know, and that's the frustrating part, is we won't know until that first game, stage 2, week 1, and we're going on and we're like, okay, this is what the actual meta is going to be like, unless it's Chengdu versus Atlanta. And if that's the case, do not pay attention to that match on what the meta is, because both those teams do not play the meta.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too. Like, with these teams that are already running heavy DPS, are we just going to be seeing different DPS in those slots, or what's going to happen? Or are they just going to try to offset things again? I don't know. But what I do know is, there's been a team out there who, we've kind of been, I don't want to say shaming, but more trolling in regards to, their Twitch emote, because they did in fact win 0 in stage 1, that being the LA Valiant, and this is going to open up our hot community topic. So everyone knows, Cussa hasn't really been seeing play throughout the entirety of stage 1. And then, Valiant, they have their YouTube series, and there was a snippet from their YouTube series that has caused a huge commotion, both on social media as well as on the competitive Overwatch Reddit. And I'm just going to read what this says, because some people are looking at this as a shedding light on the situation with Custa and why we haven't seen him in the 3-3 meta. Now, this is a direct quote from the video, and we can get into maybe further explanation, whether we buy into this or what the real problem is with the Valiant so far. But the quote is, and of course, this is kind of edited, but it says, however, the other 5 players didn't have the level of understanding that could properly utilize Custa's plays, and Custa's play style was something that better suited a team that had an overall higher understanding of the meta.
I read that and I'm just like, oh my god, you just on video, you're just like, Yeah, the reason he's playing is he's just too dang smart.
Yeah, our
Like,
team is just
like
too
we
stupid
just
to
have a
play
team
3-3.
of idiots. Like, they don't even understand what goats is, but Custa does, but we better not play him because he's going to make everyone else feel stupid. Like, that's how it, like, obviously it probably was out of context, and the person editing this video needs to be fired because, like, unless this was not out of context whatsoever,
Right.
horrible editing job. Like, horrible. But yeah, this is just a weird thing to say in an interview about the face of your team. In like, we want to play him, but his IQ's up here. Everyone else's IQ's down here.
Right.
They don't mesh. I'm like, no, you need to stop talking now. And guess what? He's not talking much anymore. So,
yeah, we'll definitely touch up on that here in just a little bit. But I have to say, like, when I saw this quote, my initial reaction was, why would you say that? Like, what good does that information give anyone? Because for one, that puts you in a bad light as a coach. Two, that just makes it even more confusing. Because if Custa was so big brain that he had such a high IQ and understanding of the meta, you would think he'd be able to kind of bestow some of that knowledge upon his 5 other teammates that would be in the starting lineup. And then you add on the fact that this is a mixed roster, and to me, this is really what I think is happening. Moon has more faith in the Korean side of that roster, which is why we see Kuki basically switching roles to play main support. And it's just been one of those situations where, you know, Kareev got moved to DPS, which has been hit or miss. You know, Kareev has been great in fantasy, terrible on Zarya.
But great in fantasy.
So
and someone in our league dropped him.
I mean, he's got that upside, but everything outside of that has really been a miss. And it just seems like the Valiant at this point either just are misusing ultimates on the support line, which can easily be fixed with, you know, shot calling. Whoever is shot calling might need to be, you know, getting a talking to at some point, whether that's Fate or whether it is a support line actually calling that stuff out. But it's just like, there have been so many things that have just felt so mismatched about the Valiant this season. And at 0-7 in a shortened season, I'm not going to say they're at the point where they're not going to be able to bounce back. But at this stage in the game, you couldn't have dug a deeper grave to try to work your way out of. It's just, they need a drastic turnaround, and maybe they'll get that with some of the other news we'll be talking about. But right now, they're just banking on a meta shift, but I don't know if that is going to be enough for them.
Yeah, and also the first thing when I saw this that I like popped into my head is the meme of Hagrid from Harry Potter walking away. I should not have said that. I should not have said that. Like, that's the first thing. He's probably just like, I can't believe I just said that. Please don't use that. Please don't use that. Please don't use that. But you're right. He probably favors a little bit of the Korean rosters. I mean, that's you know, Kareev, who was not a DPS last year. He was a utility man, yes, but was not a full-blown DPS. Well, when you lose, you know, soon, you're just like, okay, well, we need a new DPS. Don't worry, we'll make one of our supports our main DPS. Okay, but we have this need for a main healer. I know what we're going to do. We're going to take one of our damage dealers and make them a support. I'm just like, one of our tanks and make him support. Like,
right?
What is this ass backwards like thinking here? Like, it's just not working out for them. They're just, Custa's a good healer. Custa's may not be the best Lucio, but he's probably the better of the two Lucios on the team. It's just, for one reason or another, he liked Kuki more on the main healer role over your main healer. It just, I don't know. It's very weird. I fully expect Kuki to be back on backup tank duty come next stage, and Custa just being full-time in the lineup. It's like a foregone conclusion, but who knows if Custa's going to be on the team? Who knows who's going to be on the team? Because they can make trades, they can sign people, stuff like that. So, it could be interesting, but the Valiant, they're technically not out of the season 1 playoffs. They're not technically out, but they're pretty darn close. Like, they need to do a 0-7 to 7-0 type of thing to get back on track. They really do, because they have to go 7-0 in stage 2 to be at 500 going into the final 2 stages. A 500 team probably isn't even going to make it to the season playoffs. So,
it's they really on the bubble for sure.
On the bubble for sure, but they need to drastically turn things around, and hopefully this next step we talk about will be what turns them around. Because right now they're the Dallas Fuel from season 1, stage 1. Mm-hmm. They really are. They came in with all this hype, great play previous to this season, and then just massively disappointed.
Yeah, and it was a lot too, since they finished stage 4 going 9-1. They took the stage 4 title.
Yep.
And then it's just a drastic turnaround. But I want to ask you this. So let's say in Custa's situation, you are technically the face of the LA Valiant. You're the one that's, on all the posters, all the billboards, doing a lot of the marketing, and you get benched for the entirety of the stage. Are you going out and demanding a trade off of the team?
No. And the reason is, we keep tiptoeing around the subject, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but they fired their coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason, I honestly believe this, the main reason he got fired was because of his handling of Custa. So Custa actually probably feels great about the franchise,
mm-hmm.
because he's like, I knew I got mistreated. Everyone knew I got mistreated and how I was not played, and it got our coach fired.
Mm-hmm.
So, he has to feel great going in, knowing that the next coach they bring in is basically, kind of almost has to play Custa. Custa has to be the face of the team again and be out there every map, everything like that. And it's not a bad thing, because Custa's not, a bad player. He's still a good main healer. So, I think he probably feels really good about the situation. The iffy thing is, if the Valiant want to kind of wash their hands of the whole awkward relationship or the awkward talk, and they get rid of him. Because they can trade him. I don't think he really has a say in it. They can trade people for other people if they want to or not. So, let's say they trade him to the Toronto Defiant. We talked about this last night. They trade him to Toronto for aid. They bring in aid to pair with Izayaki. That would be, good for the Valiant, bad for Custa, good for Toronto. So it's. I think it boils down to how the team feels about having Custa on there, and if it will be a distraction.
All right, well, moving on. Another major thing that happened last week was, we potentially saw Shanghai Dragons redeem themselves after what was the most disastrous C9 in Overwatch history when they lost to the Dallas Fuel there in the prior week. But, they went up against the Fuel again, unfortunately, not go their way again. They actually got swept by the Fuel in that first series, but then they had a date with a London Spitfire, and oh my gosh, was so many things made this play. So there was a C9. It was not a Shane 9. This was by the London Spitfire. This was on Route 66. and Dragons were on the attack, and we saw Dean basically just doing a back cap. Dallas Field were heavily invested in their ultimates to win the team fight, which, of course, they did win because it was, 6v5 in this situation. But Dean is just in the back, just tiptoeing in front of the payload, pushing it along. And I have to say, the thing that really made me chuckle was the fact that, we had Uber and Mr. X on the commentary, and Mr. X was trying to speak so quiet as if he was trying not to alert what was going on at the time. And I don't know why, but it really threw me for a loop. It's well, the audience sound alone, would be a tipping point, but they all have, soundproof, headphones.
It's like Uber's like, be very, very quiet. Mm-hmm. We're hunting rabbits. Mm-hmm. They're not going to hear you. You're fine. Don't whisper it. I get it, but from his perspective, also, it kind of when he does something like that from a broadcaster point of view, it adds to the momentum for the viewers. So it's I get it. It's just it was just an odd situation all around. I mean, everything from the back cap to Uber to the crowd, no, they're not okay. They just back capped. All right, fair enough. It's every Sombra's dream.
Yeah, and it's not like it was a very short distance either, because he was pushing it for a while, and it, with one person, it kind of takes some time to actually move that payload.
Yeah, and it's not we see Lucio's do it from time to time because they can boot people away from the payload when they try and run back. Well, Sombra didn't even need to, just kind of stood there hey, oh don't mind me, and take this about 20 yards to the checkpoint. And it's just, I can't believe Shanghai actually won this.
Yes.
It's they won it in 5, okay, but the Spitfire had been looking so good, but man, they just did not look good in this. And I 100% don't think it's Shanghai looked really good. I think it's more of the Spitfire looked bad.
I feel like a lot of that series was just dictated by the Sombra play, and we were so used to Guard being the standout Sombra player, at least between these two teams, and that was not the case in this series because Dean really had his number. But I wanna circle back really quick to Shanghai, and I want to get your thoughts on where they are as a team right now, because they finished this stage already. They don't have another match. They went 3-4, which is pretty good for them, considering that everyone knows the season 1 story. How would you rate their overall stage 1 performance as a team?
I mean, as a team, a C. They went 3-4. They had I believe it was a negative map differential. Let's see, of -4. So they're a below average team. They're better than people might be oh, well, you gave them a C. That's too low. I'm not comparing them to last season. If I'm comparing them to last season, they get an A, obviously, because they have more than 0 wins.
S rank.
Yeah, they're S rank compared to last year. But if I'm just looking at it as from an entire league point of view, they're a below average team. They're a C minus, because they took what are they in right now? I think 15th place right now. Mm-hmm. They'll probably end up right around there. 13, 14, 15, 16. Somewhere in that vicinity. That's the bottom tier of the league. So, I can't give them anything higher than a C on the stage. They definitely show a lot of improvement. I think they need help in certain areas. I think a different meta will definitely benefit them. I'm not a huge fan of their off-tank play. I do like their main tank play, and Luffy. I mean, Luffy is super fun to watch, and I actually really like their DPS core. So I mean, really, it's kind of their tank and their main healer that probably could be upgraded, but doesn't necessarily have to be upgraded. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I feel like moving forward, if we're going to see the best iteration of the Dragons, they need to stick with that Kondu Panthera roster for Shanghai, because they've looked the best when they've had, those 4 players in their lineup, which of course would have to mean that, Kagiri would kind of be right at the bench and being a sub on this team. But I have to say, they've had really good moments. I feel like Gamzu has really picked up a lot of momentum. He's really been a stand-up player for that team. And I'd say the level of composure that we have seen from him, too, you can tell that he's taken on kind of like that leadership aspect on that team. And I feel like that's definitely going to give them a bit of a bump. Now, where that's going to put them at the end of the season, it's kind of hard to say. If they are going to be in contention, you're going to be looking at that 7th through 12th play-in tournament at the end of Stage 4. It's just a matter of if they can just finish a couple of these stages, go in 4-3, or maybe 5-2. But if they keep playing at 500, or like 4, whatever the math comes out to in a 7 game stage, they just need to get a couple of more wins, or if they are losing, they got to make sure that they aren't having such a huge map differential, because that's really going to come back to bite them the further that the season progresses.
Yeah, and I think they're one of the few teams, like there's a few teams out there that could 100% benefit from a drastic meta change, and they are one of them. I think they desperately don't want to play 3-3. I mean, you saw that when Gamsu, they didn't have Gamsu.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't try and fake 3-3.
Right.
They went out and they're like, we're going to go quad DPS with Gaguri on Hamster.
We're just going to pull a China like all the other Chinese teams are doing.
And the thing is that was actually, they were actually good at it. Like, they didn't get the wins, but, like, it was good play. It's just, it's so impossible to do that and beat 3-3. It's just not built for that on most maps. So it's, the potential's there for them to really kind of step it up, but they need more stability. Like you said, they need to figure out their roster, kind of stick with it, and not be subbing in every single map. Figure out who there is going to be their off tank, stick with it. Like you said, probably means Gaguri is going to be on riding the pine. But if the team's winning, I think she'll be fine with it. I mean, she kind of has to be. And she can come in. Like, I actually liked her Hammond play when I saw it. So, like, she could be their Hammond specialist on certain maps. And I think that's what you really have to do with a lot of these people who ride the pine, is get them to be specialists on certain maps with certain heroes, and then you can bring them in to really kind of dominate certain maps. So she could definitely be that person, but they might benefit from signing one more support. They have 0 backup support on that team. So that is something maybe they could trade for Custa. No?
I don't know, Ed. I mean, they went the Korean route, so
I don't know. Do you think Shanghai Dragons are smart enough to play with Custa, though? See? I don't know. I don't know how many teams can handle Custa's big brain.
I mean, Gamzu and Striker were smart enough to get out of Boston, so, I mean, really, it's hard to...
Valid. Maybe it's like, all right, so have you ever seen that Futurama episode? Yes, I'm going Futurama here. Where Leonardo da Vinci, it's been told that he's actually from another planet, but he's the stupidest person on that planet.
Right.
Custa is our Leonardo da Vinci. He's on the Valiant, and the team's kind of stupid, but he's the smart one. But if he goes to another team, then he would be the stupid one and everyone else is smarter than him. See? This is how my big brain works.
I like where we're going.
Yeah, like it's science. Bill Nye would agree. So, but yeah, I like the Shanghai Dragons. I think they're on the uptick. They're no longer the darlings. I don't think of the lovable losers of the Overwatch League, which is good for them. I mean, the lovable losers right now are the Hunters. Like, because they're the ones playing the fun comps and that everyone loves. But, they've replaced the Shanghai Dragons. But I don't think you want to be the lovable losers because you're the losers.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't want to be losers. And, I can't... here's the thing. I don't know if I could coin Washington Justice as a lovable losers. Like, I know they got their fans out there. They're putting on their watch parties. But I haven't really seen the presence at the arena.
They don't have that interesting play style. Like, the Hunters are the lovable losers because they're playing, like, the double-shielded Bastion comp. Washington is playing the meta and just sucks at it. Like, they're playing everything, Vancouver versus New York Excelsior are playing the same matchups as New York Excelsiors versus Washington Justice, except Washington Justice just suck at it.
And then, 30% of the team fights or whatever that stat was from Captain Planet.
Yeah, and obviously there were no financial issues with the team when they put them together, and that's why they got such a great team. So, yeah, no, Washington is not the lovable losers. They're just losers.
Maybe they'll get there one day, but they don't have that star player to kind of like bring in the attraction, so to speak.
Corey could, if he really steps it up and becomes more consistent. He could. He's the closest one on that team that could. So,
still makes me feel bad for Otto, man. It's definitely a rough go. But let's go ahead and jump into Overwatch League talk even more because that is most of where our esports talk is coming from. So first up, this, something that we had briefly mentioned earlier was that Valiant. They are just over Moon. Not over the Moon. They're just over Moon altogether after starting 0-7 in stage number 1. So Moon was the first to go, and we already talked about the drastic decline compared to stage 4 of the 2018 season. So what does this mean for the Valiant? Well, it means that, for one, they are looking to find a replacement coach. So in the meantime, we will have Pekin 10 standing in as the team's interim head coach. And then, of course, you still have their assistant coaches, Stoop and Donzu, continuing to work with their current positions. And then outside of that, the Valiant also made another move and parted ways with one of their translators who was also working as an assistant team manager, and that was Korean Mulan. Okay, and so 0-7 starts. Clearly the meta was not in the Valiant's favor. I want to get your thoughts on if you feel the timing was right to let Moon go, or if you feel like maybe you would have given him maybe a couple of games in stage 2 to just see how the Valiant fare given any sort of meta shift that were to happen.
I think it was 100% the time to go. Because from what you gather, from everything you hear, he lost the team. And once you lose the team, there's no coming back from it. Not only did you lose the team, you lost the fan base. Like, when things are going that bad, when you go that drastic of we were in the finals last season to we haven't won a game the entire stage the next season, something drastic needs to happen. And all the blame will always go on the coach. Always go on the coach. That's in every sport. The blame stops at the coach. So who's the first one to get fired in those kind of situations? It's the coach. They're not going to just trade people, and break up the team and gut them all. They're going to go out and fire a coach and try and bring in a new one that will fit them better. A la Dallas Fuel. Fire Kai, bring in Arrow. And Arrow turned the team around. Despite having players that he probably doesn't want on the team, he just makes it work. They need to bring in somebody like Arrow. Now, there's no super duper up and coming young coach. Honestly, the biggest name out there, if they really wanted to make a splash, is Jane. If they really wanted to make a splash, it could work out, it could bomb, but it's something that they probably have to consider. It was a complete right time for them to fire their coach. And whenever you fire a coach, assistants get fired too, or with the translator and assistant team manager, Korean Milan, it could have been a package deal with them. Or he's just you know what, I'm using this as a reason to leave the team to go explore other things and stuff like that. Not to mention, on top of all this, they lost 2 of their assistant coaches in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So, the 2 top coaches they had, one is with Paris, the other is with Boston.
Correct.
So, who was the real coach then? You that's also kind of telling too. You keep essentially the same team minus Soon, who we've seen Soon is not all he's cracked up to be. He's just not. So the only difference is you lose Soon and you lose your backup off tank. But you gain Izayaki, who is legit one of the best flex support healers in the game, minus his ult usage.
Yeah, I was gonna add that caveat. So.
Minus the ult usage. That's pretty trash. But you basically have the same team intact. The only true difference is you lost your 2 top assistant coaches. And then the team goes 0-7. So who was he actually, was Moon actually a real coach to the team? Or were the other 2 doing everything and making Moon look better? So you just don't know because you're just not in there dealing with it and everything like that. And we could talk about it all day, but the buck stops with the coach, so he's got to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you think it was too soon?
I don't think so. I'm glad you did bring up the off-season moves because, yes, they did lose Goomba, who's with Boston Uprising. Damon is with Paris Eternal. And maybe there was just better synergy with the coaching staff. Maybe they were able to divide the responsibilities of the team management aspect of it, doing the strategies, having that player sort of relations at different levels, or maybe it was split between, the Koreans and the non-Koreans on the roster. But it just seems like at the end of the day, regardless of what sort of crap that was said on Inside Valiant, there's just been some really weird decisions. And when it came to making changes, the changes there were none. They didn't try to move Agilities off of Brigida, which has not been his strong suit. They didn't try to move Kareev to a different role when he was really suffering on that Zarya role with just awful bubbles management, which was directly impacting how Fate was performing when Fate really should have been able to just be a better presence on that team, on that main tank role, and it just wasn't there because he didn't have the survivability that he should have had, or the protection from his off-tank player. So I just feel like it's just too many moving pieces, and none of them really stuck on that team. And it's a shame because the Valiant last season were one of the better teams in the league. And then they kind of just went from being one of the better teams to all of a sudden embracing the win the win zero Twitch emote, as we can see in the Twitch chat from Opera Mouse. And the Valiant are too good of a team to not pick up a win in a stage.
I mean, they have three of the top. I mean, at least two of the top 20 players in the Overwatch League, in Izayaki and Space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Space is top 2, 3 off tank. Like, what he does, he eats so many grabs. And his placement is on point. He's good. He's really good. And Izayaki is probably top 5 flex supports out there in the league right now. So you have them, and then you have Agilities, who's good, but stuck on...
He's in Brig jail.
Yeah, he's stuck in, I'm just going to flail and hit Q.
That's when he's Agilites.
Yeah, like, and Kareev is not that great.
I'm sorry.
But, not that great on Zarya, but also, not such a detriment that they shouldn't win a game.
Mm-hmm.
And Fate's a bit of a disappointment this year, but who knows if that's all because of Kareev or if that's a little bit more on Fate or not getting bubbles. You don't know. To me, it kind of all boils down to their main support play is screwing them. Like, if one thing can just screw over a team, it's one support player. I mean, we saw that with the Fusion. I mean, when Elk came in to play main support, that was horrible. All right, so to play flex support. Mm-hmm. That was just horrible because he's a main support player. Well, you don't have a main support player playing main support for the Valiant. You have a tank playing main support for the LA Valiant. And that alone right there probably cost them a couple of wins or chances at a win because they were close in a lot of matches. That's why for the first few weeks, everyone was hesitant to plummet them in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just like, well, they just keep losing and just keep losing and just keep losing. They just, it's get Custa in there. You will get a win within the first 2 series in stage 2.
Yeah, we just need to see a little bit more stability. And, we will see a growth of the Valiant moving forward. And, that's not been the only thing that has been growing, because if you've been looking at the Twitch numbers, Ed, they've actually been doing pretty solid here lately. So we've been looking at the year-over-year viewership growth when it comes to Twitch. And week 4 average 131,000 concurrent viewers, which added up to a total of 3.7 million hours watched across the weekend. So, for comparison's sakes, last season posted 99.5k concurrent viewers for a total of 2.44 million hours watched. And when we're looking at the peak viewership, at least with concurrent, we had the Dragon Spitfire game, which was one of them that went to 5 maps leading the charge, with the highest peak of the weekend coming during the Titans Hunters game with 141k. So I'd say, the numbers across the board have been fluctuating a little bit. They were higher up, towards the start of the season, but that concurrent viewer year to year is still up. And, part of that's just due to the fact that, we kind of have more matches for one. But we now have just so many more ways to watch, and to see the viewership growth continuing on Twitch, despite having all these other avenues, is still really nice to see. And I'm really anxious, though, to, do a side-by-side of stage 1 and then stage 2, knowing that, things are going to be looking pretty spicy here in just a matter of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that these are up over last year. I'm shocked at that, actually, and not because I don't think the viewership would be out there. It's because they increased the avenue to watch games, so they're spreading themselves out more to get more viewers, which in theory should have reduced the amount of viewers on Twitch. But it did the exact opposite. It increased the viewers on Twitch. Like you said, they got more maps, more games to watch because we got more teams. And that will happen probably again next year. I mean, next year, I fully expect them to go back. Well, we'll have a Chicago team. That's a given. Like, we're having a Chicago team. Like, yeah, non-negotiable. But like, they'll probably go back to having matches on Wednesdays, honestly. But it won't affect the players because they'll play the same amount of games. It just spreads it out more. Because if let's say they add 4 more teams, how are they going to add more games on Thursdays, Fridays? Are they going to start playing games at midnight? No. Can they add a 5th game on Saturday and Sundays? No. They'll probably have to go back to having like 2 matches on Wednesdays or something like that. So whatever they decide to work it out. But yeah, like now you have Twitch, which is up. It's every week on Disney XD. Trust me, the announcers remind us. Every time it's like, well, we welcome all our Disney XD viewers. Thank you for the heads up. It's on ESPN Plus now. So if you have that, they're all on there. It's going to be on ABC. It's going to be on ESPN too. Lord knows how good the numbers are in China, as unreliable as that might be. But those are probably up because, well, we have 3 Chinese teams now. So it's one of those things where I did not expect the viewership to be up on Twitch, but I expected the overall viewership to be up. So this is just an added surprise to me. So I'm looking forward to it. Twitch has to be ecstatic about this. Like, ecstatic about this. Because I don't think there's another esport that has this much consistent viewership throughout an entire week. Like, and that's every week. Like, yes, CSGO, League of Legends, stuff like that, their major events get massive, way more viewership than the Overwatch League does when they have their tournaments. But that's not a Thursday through Sunday thing every week. Like, this is why Twitch and Blizzard are such good partners. Like, Twitch loves Blizzard. And when they rumored today Activision Blizzard is setting up a CSGO. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, like Call of Duty.
Call of Duty Overwatch League style esport.
Yeah.
For $25 million. Twitch is going to be all over that.
Of course.
So, like, it's great. It does a lot of wonders. And honestly, when I get into arguments with my non-esports friends and esports haters out there, I can come back to this and be like, yeah, this is the viewership. Like, you may think I'm wrong, but you can't argue with facts. Like, this is just on Twitch. They play for however many flipping hours a week and have 131,000 people watching it for 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I mean, last year in the finals, 10 million viewers watched the finals. So it's hard to argue with any of this. So, good for Blizzard, good for Twitch, good for any future investments. Mm-hmm. Like, will only bring in more high-end investors.
Absolutely. And I do quickly want to pull up a question that was posted in chat from Opera Mouse. I don't know if it's going to actually post the whole thing, so hopefully it's not just going to do the scrolling thing. But Opera Mouse asks, do you think people could be leaving their PC on Twitch for the Overwatch League tokens and then going about their lives or watching on Disney XD/ABC, i.e. OWL tokens go away, viewers are reduced? Okay, so this has been something that a lot of people have been bringing up, is the cosmetics aiding the viewership of Overwatch League. And for me, the tokens are a bonus, but that's not what's drawn me to the league. Like, the skins are there, sure, they're cool, but if the skins weren't there, it wouldn't prevent me from actually tuning in. But when we do see the TV broadcast, I do know quite a few people who will just throw their Twitch up, whether it is on their PC, on their PS4, Xbox One, whatever, and then they prefer to have that more living room-esque, environment to watch the games, to really take it all in, as opposed to doing the command center, things like that, or just having to deal with the cesspool that is Twitch chat at times in the Overwatch League.
Yep. I'll flat out admit, I do this probably 50% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have it up on my computer, but a lot of times it's on Thursdays and Fridays. So I'll be making myself dinner and I'll have it up on my computer, or so I can get the Twitch tokens, but I'm away from my computer, so I can't listen to it, see what's going on. So I'll have it up on my TV, and I'll be cooking dinner, and then I'll sit down to eat, watch it while I'm eating dinner. If I have plans on a Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, if I'm not going to be gone for a ridiculous amount of times, honestly, I'll just turn on my computer, turn it to the Overwatch League network. Overwatch League. I do that so much. I mean,
if you just want to lurk in our chat at all times, then by all means, you're just not going to be getting tokens from me.
Yeah. So I'll just turn on the Overwatch League Twitch channel and then go out and go out to the bar with some friends or go out to dinner or something like that, and then come back. Because yes, I do want those tokens, and I also want to add to the viewership. Mm-hmm. Because anyone who says that it's fake viewership, sponsors don't care.
They just want to see numbers, guys. That's all.
Yeah, you could have it on your if you can have it on your computer, then have it on your TV, then also go on ESPN Plus on your iPad and watch it. That counts as 3 viewers in sponsors' minds. The more sponsors, the more money. The more money, the longer this lasts, the better the quality, the more teams, the more, players get paid. Stuff like that. This all trickles down. So I'm actually all for people putting, watching Twitch on their computer and then going and watching it on the TV. Because that just means more viewership and more money. And despite what people say, more money for the Overwatch League is good. It's good for the league. It's good for the viewers. Stuff like that. So, yeah, by all means, go do it. And if all they have to do is give away some super cheap home and away skins in-game to get people to do that, that is the smallest price to pay. Mm-hmm. Because it's not a specialty skin. Because they have to create those skins either way for the actual Overwatch League, so you can tell teams apart. So if they're putting it in the game for them, might as well put it in the game for us and bribe people to watch on Twitch. I'm not against being bribed. I'm totally okay with it, as long as it benefits me and it benefits them. So I'm all for this. Everyone out there listening, watch it on your Twitch channel. Also watch it on your TV. If you have good enough internet, also stream it on ESPN Plus or Disney XD. Do all 3.
All the things.
Yep.
Well, moving on, we do have a new stats article from Captain Planet, who, of course, does all the Overwatch League stats that you see flying up on your screen during the broadcast. And this one's kind of expanding on the team fight aspect of the game, which is another article that we talked about on our network. This one centers around first deaths and landing the first blows in team fights. So, okay, if we're talking about, which team dies first, or just has a player that dies first in these team fights, this should come as no surprise, but the team that is dying the most first is Washington Justice.
This is my shocked face.
Oh, is it?
I'm shocked. I feel shocked, as Cotton would say it.
Yeah. And that total then is 60.4%. And there are 2 other teams on here that when I first saw this, I was like, wait, really? And to one of them, I could kind of agree, primarily just due to the fact that there's kind of been a common name that's always the first to pop up in the kill feed for dying first. So second to last, we have Boston Uprising at 54.4%, and then we have the LA Gladiators at 53.8%. So Boston was kind of like the one that surprised me, but then when I thought about the Gladiators, I was like, well, Roar has been having some issues. He's been the first to die a lot of times, so I'm sure he is a heavy attribute to where the Gladiators are ranked in that retrospect.
Yeah, no, like the Gladiators really stuck out to me with that. There are two teams that stuck out to me with this. One, the Gladiators, 53% or 53.8% first death rate, but they have a high win percentage. What? Like higher than average. New York Excelsior was normal. Like, they have a 34% first death rate, 18.2% win rate on those.
Yeah, they're
not
just
surprising.
Leading everything.
The Hanzo Spark. So they have first death rate of 42.3. So below half the time, they're the first death. But they only win 8.5% of those. Like, their win rate for those is kind of drastic. Like, in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of surprising to me how they can get the first kill in this, but still not come out, with a winning record. And that's pretty drastic. The Seoul Dynasty, that's how they're number 2 on the list is beyond me. I just don't get it. But like if you look at the bottom 4 teams, it's Washington Justice, trash team, D Squad, whatever you want to call it, and then it's the Spark, Toronto, and the Fusion. Like, so you have 2 of the top 5 teams in the bottom 4 in this. So I mean, it's telling, but there's no consistency with it. Like, it's awesome stats to have, but it doesn't tell you anything about the actual league. Because, the Titans have the highest win percentage when a first death rate occurs. Fine, they're at the top. Well, number 2 is Seoul Dynasty. Well, they're bottom 6. After that, you have New York, top. After that, Spitfire, top 10. Then you have Paris Eternal, bottom 5. Gladiators, bottom 5. Guangzhou Charge, right now, not going to make the playoffs. Then you have the Spark. Then you have the Hunters. Like, there's no consistency in all of this. So that just tells me that it's the wild, wild west out there, and sometimes stats just don't matter. Like, because, you can have 8% win rate when your first death rate, like the Toronto Defiant, and still be the number 3 team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also have an 18% win rate when your team is the first to die and be, 16th in the league. So it's just one of those things where it's cool stats and you can get a rough idea, but it's so inconsistent that I'm just like, I don't know how to take this.
Right. What I took away is basically these Korean teams that have been together a while tend to win more team fights. And that was really like a major takeaway that you could actually make out of this stat article. But yeah, like to see Dynasty up there with New York and Vancouver in regards to the team fight win rate after a first death, with all those teams posting like 18% plus, it's just like Dynasty tends to be more clutch on like defense, but I don't think that necessarily translates outside of defense. At least it's not that noticeable to me. So I don't quite know what to make of it. And then there's like this huge fluctuation of first death rate when you compare Seoul to New York Excelsior, where there's like 16% difference between the two from, the league best to where Seoul is at. So it's just really weird. But I do want to note, like, beyond this, they also kind of jumped into like hero specific details when it came to first deaths. And I do quickly want to note the Zarya stats. So this has been one that they've been bringing up a lot. I remember when I initially started reporting, like losing the Zarya first meant that you would go on to win like 5% or like 5.6% of those team fights. And that number has actually steadily been increasing, and it currently sits at 7.8%. But at the end of the day, when you look at the stats, losing your Zarya is still the worst character to lose in the current 3-3 meta. But outside of that, it seems like Zenyatta is the next up, really, because Zenyatta we have been seeing pretty much in every single match. So go figure, really the two positions that have been the playmakers, so to speak, are the guys that you do not want to lose. Shocking, who would have known?
Yeah, no, weird how that works out. The two characters who probably make Goats the strongest, if they die, Goats doesn't work. Again, shocked face. Mm-hmm. One thing they did also go over was the first blow rates in this, and that actually was much more telling of how things actually are. I'm not going to go through all of it, but like if you look at the top 5, you have Atlanta, Titans, Shock, New York, Philly. Well, those are the top 5 teams. You know, when you look at the bottom, you have the Hunters, Paris, Justice, Spark, Uprising, Charge, Mayhem. Those are teams that are, I mean, outside of the Charge, are towards the bottom. Like, so that is a much more telling stat. And the outlier in this, again, is the Gladiators. And you take both of those into account, because Gladiators are like, what, 7th in this? You take both of those into account, the Gladiators are performing better than their record actually shows. And this kind of proves it. They're playing well. It's just, feels bad, man. Like, just bad situations, stuff like that. Because that team, if we want to talk about the Valiant are too skilled to not have any wins, the Gladiators are more skilled than the Valiant and should have a lot more wins. So, yeah, it's all interesting. Captain Planet, please keep coming out with these kind of crazy, fun stats for us to dive into all the time, please. I want more individual player stats. That's more on the fantasy aspect of it, because that would be awesome to know too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do quickly want to note, if you look at the Zarya stats, Soon by far has the most first deaths out of all the Zaryas in the league at 11%.
I mean, not this past week because he didn't play because he got benched.
Doesn't adjust his stat, though.
Doesn't adjust the stat, but doesn't help his stat either because he's not playing.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't change the stat, but it does decrease the stock value in Soon. All right, well, with that being said, Ed, let's go over some of our takeaways from Overwatch League Stage 1 Week 4. So why don't you start us off? What were some of your key takeaways here from this past week of games?
Well, all right. Probably the biggest takeaway I had was, one, Paris Eternal are not as good as we thought. Mm-hmm. They are who we thought they were. Sorry, just quoting Slambo there. If you watch our YouTube video of our rankings, you'll understand. New York Excelsior had a dominant win against the San Francisco Shock. That is not a knock on the Shock, in my mind. The Shock are still a top 3-4 team to me in this meta. But the New York Excelsior looked really good, and I cannot wait for New York Excelsior versus the Vancouver Titans in the finals. And I still think it will be in the finals. Vancouver, a lot of people are going to say that, they went 3-2 against the Hunters. I think it was more they just didn't know what to expect from the Hunters, and that threw them off. And then all of a sudden they're just like, wait a second, we can't lose to them. And they came back and they win it. Everyone in the league is treating the Washington Justice like a joke. I mean, the Seoul Dynasty game should have been the perfect example of we're putting in our B team to play you, Justice, and we beat you 3-1. You know, like, that's how much we think of your team. You know, the Toronto Defiant, better than what a lot of people think. They're sneakily becoming very, very good team. I do think the Defiant are 3-3 like dependent though. More like they're going to do great this stage, but they're not going to do that great in a non 3-3 meta. Like Paris, go back to them, how people overestimated them. This is their best meta. Like, Paris is not going to get better than what they are right now. And that's not good for Paris fans. They're going to get worse. You know, Dallas, I think now that Bob's not here, and I can openly talk about Dallas without getting into this super long fight with him. Dallas is a little bit overrated in this meta. Just because, I mean, I think they're very good in the 3-3. I think they're better than average, but I'm also not a huge fan of their DPS line. So once they get out of this meta and into, let's say for instance, it's a 2-2-2 meta, I think Dallas will fall a little. And then, I mean, you fall in love with certain teams and certain players more and more. Violet from the San Francisco Shock is my new bae. Like, I love Violet. Like, I'm almost full-fledged Shock fan because of Violet.
Mm-hmm.
Shu from the Guangzhou Charge, super underrated, super fun to watch. Decay from the Gladiators will be one of the top DPS. Once DPS are actually playable, he will be one of the top DPS in the Overwatch League. It will be like, when you talk about DPS, it's going to be like Carpe, you know, Prophet, Decay. Like, that is what you're going to be talking about in this. And then, you know, the Hunters. The Hunters are hands down the most fun team to watch. I don't even think it's close. They are last season's Gladiators. Like, Gladiators last season, and correct me if I'm wrong, but last season the Gladiators were not that great to start off the season. They were run-of-the-mill, average team. Nothing special about them. But people just loved their play style and loved the way they played their matches. And then they slowly got better, and better, worked better as a team, and then they hit the right meta, and they became, you know, playoff team. That's how I see the Hunters going. Like, the Hunters, everyone loves them right now, and by their own admission, they're like, this is not our meta. This is not how we play. We're not going to do good. But yet they still have a couple wins. They're fun to watch. They're going to be a team, I'd say, by stage 3, the Hunters are the team I would be like top 6. Because I think if the meta hits them right, they're going to be a force. Because Jinmu is one of the best. If you watch one map from this past season or past week, go back to the Hunters match on Ilios and watch him on Pharah. Some of the plays and shots he was hitting on Pharah were insane, especially like guiding.
Volskaya and his Hanzo was also really sick too.
Exactly, like basically any map with Jinmu. Just go watch any map with Jinmu. But like the Pharah play, the way he was landing his direct rocket shots on Pharah on characters like Lucio. Like, Lucio is notoriously elusive to hit when they're wall riding, going up and down, doing all this stuff. And he's just like, nope, I'm on Pharah. I'm going to kill you with my Pharah. And it was a thing of beauty. So go back, watch Jinmu, against the Titan on Ilios or Volskaya when he's on Hanzo. So it was a very fun week to watch. Even though, my Spark only played one map and lost 3-0 to Toronto, and that hurts. But, it happens. We finally have a tank with the Spark. We have no more. Is it going to be No Smite or is it going to be Gushui? It's Gushui. Gushui is the main tank for the Spark. Write it down right now. Gushui is the main tank. I think they've kind of committed to that. So I don't know. I could go on for like another 20 minutes on musings from this week. But what about you, Totem? What did you take away from this week?
I mean, I would look at my watch. I don't have one on, so I'm not even going to do that bit. So, for one, this has kind of been a team that we've already kind of talked about quite a bit tonight, and that's the LA Gladiators. To me, when it comes to teams that have a losing record, there's no doubt within my mind that the LA Gladiators are the best team that are not at 500 or above. It was just unfortunate that people have kind of been farming Roar quite often. But this is a team that is going to be able to pick up a lot more momentum once we do see a shift in DPS-centric compositions. And, the whole Decay Surefour thing has been interesting to watch. Seeing, Surefour kind of, riding the bench a bit. But Decay, outside of a couple of performances on Zarya, he's really stood out pretty quickly for them, which is good to see since... there was a pretty notable bid in war to sign him during the off-season.
I want to ask you a question. Do the Gladiators get rid of Surefour? Because they could get a hefty price for him. If they're going to stick with hydration and decay, do you want Surefour riding the bench or do you trade him? What would you do?
I'd keep him. Surefour is probably gonna go to McCree Widow, would be my guess.
Okay, so he would basically you're looking at a more specialist, but flop out him and Decay.
Yeah,
because Decay and Surefour have the same hero pool
for the most part.
Over hydration, hydration, it's gonna be hydration
Projectile.
Yeah, but what do you think the Gladiators need to? What one position do you think they need to improve on most?
That's a loaded question because, for one, we didn't see Bishu all of Stage 1. So their off-tank play was a little inconsistent, but I feel like more of that's just due to the fact that Bishu had always kind of been the translator on that team. And as soon as he's back, I feel like we're going to see a lot more consistency from them when it comes to the playmaking or just helping Roar on the front line. A little bit. And speaking of front lines, to circle back to Soon, the stats don't lie. Soon has been one of the worst Zaryas in the league. Now, first with that at 11%. Not that good. Shadowburn comes in some very tough games. Does not do so well either. And I don't want to fault Shadowburn too much in regards to his performance. But at the end of the day, Shadowburn is just another one of those players who... EQO got picked up and got started, and then he never relinquished that DPS slot on that team. But the difference is, and I'll use a comparison from another position. So we saw Space and Envy, right? LA Valiant. Envy was too good of a player to be riding the bench. And we've seen immediately what sort of impact he has been able to make for Toronto Defiant. Shadowburn is not on that level. He's not going to be a starting DPS on that team. And it's just, to me, that was always kind of a weird pairing, seeing Soon and Shadowburn. When at this stage, they've just been lackluster, for lack of a better term, at this point.
I mean, all right, I have been on the anti-Shadowburn train since the rosters were announced. I don't think Shadowburn is He's a good bit Genji player. I don't think he's starting every map type of player. Mm-hmm. He's a situational player and nothing more. And Soon, as much as I love Soon, like I loved Soon when he was on the Valiant. Like I was all for the Valiant last season. He needs the team around him to make him shine. But he does not have that team around him. Like with the Valiant, he was allowed to basically be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, do all this. But the rest of the team around him was so good, it allowed him to do that kind of stuff and really pop up. With Paris, you don't have that. I mean, you have Cruz, and we're both fans of Cruz. Mm-hmm. Ben Best is decent. Finzie's decent. Decent, not good. I see that look.
I want to do a quick side note, though. I want to see Finzie on Zarya this week. And have Nico play D.Va, because Nico had been playing D.Va in EU contenders for a long freaking time, and we haven't seen it look from them. And right now, Paris has lost all of their momentum.
Yeah, why not switch it up like that? Like, they have nothing to lose. They're not making the playoffs. Right. Like you said, they're like a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Basically, they need to 4-0 both their matches, and like 10 different teams need to lose. Like, they're not making the playoffs. So why not try something out? Try and do something like that. Honestly, I would love it, because I'm starting in the foul play experts league. I'm starting Nico, and I'm going against Soon. Start Nico on D.Va, bench Soon, win for Ednar. I love it. But no, like, they need to do something. They don't have the DPS. They have names on DPS. They don't have quality on DPS. Mm-hmm. But they're also sticking to their guns with only having European players on their team. And you run into the Shanghai Dragons situation with Paris. And you're starting to see it with them. Like, we picked, people from our country, or in this case from Europe, but we picked the wrong ones. And now we're regretting it.
If only there was a really good player that has gotten overlooked time and time again, who's been on Team Gigante, who is the only player from Gigante that wasn't signed to the Overwatch League, and has been on that team on different rosters that have won championships and still isn't in Overwatch.
Whoever do you mean? This kid, this is crazy talk.
Right.
This doesn't occur.
Signed up in, for the love of God. That perfect sign-in for the LA Valiant.
It is. I mean, if not, welcome to Chicago.
We'll take
you. And then we're going to also take Who Are You and apply. Mm-hmm. And not apply. Who's the Zenyatta from, I'm drawing a blank, Zenyatta from Fusion University.
Alarm.
Yeah, we're taking Alarm too. I'm just calling this Chicago team right now.
Make sure we keep it within budget, though.
We don't need a budget. We're going to win the championship. You don't need a budget when you win the Season 3 championship as an expansion team.
All right, well, getting back to my takeaways really quick. So, one, I got two that kind of coincide with one another. For one, the Hunters can play more than just triple DPS. And which was awesome. I love watching Hunters run their heavy DPS compositions. It's been fantastic. And then their 3-3 came out and really threw Titans for a loop. And what's scary about this is the fact that, we are so close to the playoffs. If you're Vancouver, that is not the kind of game that you want to be having, where that could technically expose, some potential weaknesses in your game, because now these playoff teams can go back, they can look at this. And for one, a lot of this, I mean, Bumper keeps going for these flank shatters. He needs to stop that because they're not working anymore. But it's gotten to the point where they're like, hey, Titans haven't been doing so good against these heavy DPS compositions. Let's just throw this at them. And chances are you're probably going to find success. Now, that being said, if you're the Titans, you're probably looking at that as saying, well, either A, we just overlooked Hunters and didn't think that they would run triple tank. And B, hey, we should probably try to shore up and kind of figure out how to deal with these heavy DPS compositions, because you know that this is going to be happening soon. Now, I'm going to give Titans the benefit of the doubt, not just because I have their jersey, but just because we've seen this roster adapt fairly well across metas. And at the end of the day, Titans are still winning a lot of the team fights. And I expect that to continue in the playoffs, and hopefully we'll get that match with the NYXL. But outside of that, I do quickly want to talk about the Fuel, and I have to say, RCK was an interesting signing to me. I haven't been overly impressed with his D.Va play. I have been more impressed with his Sombra play, so if you're the Fuel, I'd prefer to see a bit more of the Sombra come out from RCK, because I think that has led to them winning more team fights, and they've just looked like a more cohesive unit on that front. And in the Shock's case, you look at the strength of schedule, and their playoff berth, whenever it does happen, and it will happen, is by far the most impressive playoff berth of Stage 1, because they did not really have an easy game at this stage. Yes, they had some tough losses against the top two teams in the league, but they've just really dominated a lot of their other matches, and they're not like this gatekeeper type team that maybe we would have pegged them as. And I feel like a lot of that just comes down to the fact that they have been playing so well around Super, who was really kind of like the question mark for a lot of us. And while Super may not be like an S tier main tank by any stretch of the imagination, he's still been putting up some pretty good numbers, and between Violet and Sinatraa, the damage has just been through the roof. So I'm really anxious to see how the Shock are going to evolve with their, 5 DPS on the lineup. I don't know what to make of the Shock at that point, but it does seem like a lot of the hype that was kind of built on this team and the depth that they have outside of the main tank position has really shown itself, at least through Stage 1.
Yeah, and, you're starting to see the Shock come on a little bit. Choyobin has stepped up a little. And then now that they have Rascal permanently in the lineup, that's actually been huge for them.
Right.
We're still waiting to see where their big offseason pickup comes back in, but he just doesn't fit this meta with Striker. Are we going to see? I mean, we're going to see him next stage if the meta changes, because he's probably the best overall DPS player who just doesn't fit this meta. Sinatraa is just Sinatra's a better tracker, I think. That's why he's so good on Zarya, but Striker's a better tracer than Sinatraa.
That's because he doesn't triple blink.
Yeah, he doesn't triple blink in, try and go for the bomb kill, and then recall out. Like, I mean, Swoosh for the Mayhem last year is like, we're not scared of Sinatraa. We know what he does. He does this every single time. And then you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, he does do that every time. But like, I think they're going to have some staying power. And I hate to say it, with one move they could make, I'm not saying they will, but they could make, that could shore up the play style of this team. Don't kill me, Totem. If they could go get Fissure.
Yeah, I figured that's where you were going.
Fissure's play style with this team would work out tremendously. Like, they are an aggressive team. I mean, Violet uses his ult to save himself and only himself so many times, but it just works out for the team. And then Sinatraa on Zarya, you don't have a main tank when you have Sinatraa on Zarya because he's in front of the main tank. Like, hey, there's a Reinhardt shield. Sinatraa, don't worry. I'm going to be in front of the shield. And I'm just going to throw them off and just kill them all. Like, that's just what they're doing. If they had Fissure, they would be standing at people's spawn points the entire time. And it would shore up probably what I think a lot of people consider the weakest part of their team, and that is their main tank. Now, granted, they won't do it, but they could. And I think that'd be great. Like, but their DPS issues, not DPS issues, their DPS depth is going to be like, they're going to have different ones be different specialists on different maps. Like, they're a team to watch out for this year. Mm-hmm. They really are, especially if Super can kind of step it up as a tank, as a main tank.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into our main discussion, which will be our Stage 1 Week 5 preview. So first off, let's quickly go over who is in, who is out for the stage playoffs, because, you know, we still have quite a few teams that are in it. So in regards to who has clinched a playoff spot for Stage 1, we have New York Excelsior, who went 7-0 this stage with a plus 16 map differential. They top the Atlantic Division. And we have Vancouver Titans, who are currently 6-0 with a plus 14 map differential, who face the Guangzhou Charge this week. So they won the Pacific Division this stage. And we have Toronto Defiant with a 5-2 record with a plus 5 map differential. So honestly, not the best map differential by any stretch of the imagination, but they're picking up the wins. And at the end of the day, the wins matter. So who is out overall? Well, there's actually quite a few teams. For one, both LA teams are out. That would be the LA Gladiators as well as the LA Valiant. Also out are the Chengdu Hunters, Florida Mayhem, Hangzhou Spark, Shanghai Dragons, and Washington Justice. So that basically leaves us with Shock, Fusion, Reign, Fuel, Dynasty, Uprising, Charge, and Spitfire basically in the run-in, and then you have Outlaws who are kind of still in the run-in, but they face Atlanta. That's going to be a tough match, and their map differential is kind of a peg behind some of these other teams. So they need some help to get there. It is still possible, but Ed, I want to get your thoughts before we actually go into the matches. When we look at this field, how many of these spots do you feel like surefire are going to go to, like, 4 teams? Like, which spot do you feel like is going to be the most competitive? Is it going to be that ace spot?
I think it's going to be the 7th and 8th spot. Just because of the way it works out between the Fuel facing the Uprising. Like, Fuel is 4-2, but their map differential is +1 only. So if Boston Uprising hands them their whatever, they could easily fall out. And then the Charge I don't see winning because they're playing the Titans. So I feel the Charge are going to fall out, and then it's going to come down to whoever wins the Dynasty Spitfire matchup. Whoever wins that one is going to probably make the playoffs. So it's the last 2 spots I think are going to come down to Fuel, Uprising, Soul, Spitfire. I think is what it's going to kind of boil down to. Those 2 matchups, and then the Titans versus the Charge match. Like, are the 3 main matchups, because it doesn't even matter if the Charge lose, it's how much they lose by. Like, if the Titans win 3-1 or 4-0, they take over the top spot from New York Excelsior due to map differentials. But if they go 3-2, then they're tied, and then I have no idea how ties work. But like, so you have that interesting aspect of it. The the Spitfire versus the Dynasty. So like, I mean, everyone always loves the Dynasty versus Spitfire matchups because those were the two teams coming into the inaugural season of these are the two powerhouse teams. Whether they actually were or not, like they always looked highly upon. So that should be a good matchup, and they seem to be evenly matched. The big thing is going to be who the Dynasty actually bring out to play. Are they going to play Fissure and Michelle? Because they didn't against the Justice. Were they just playing the D squad? Were they sandbagging it versus the Justice? Were they going all Excelsior on us?
Dynasty can't afford to sandbag because they haven't clinched a playoff spot ever.
But that's the thing is, they can't afford to sandbag unless it's against the Justice. Because sandbagging against the Justice is still better than the Justice. So those matchups are probably the three top ones that I'm going to pay the closest attention to and have the most effect overall. How about you? Like, do you think it's only going to be one spot available, like with the Charge falling down, or do you think the Fuel Uprising matchup will really kind of throw things in whack too?
Well, I feel like Dallas. I am favoring Dallas over Boston, and Boston crumbles against Somber play. So I'm assuming RCK is going to bring that out, and Boston is going to lose that. I mean, when you kind of like look at the stats and like the map differentials, Boston does have a pretty good map differential when you compare them to some of these other teams that are in the run-in. But I feel like since they're not favored, that's definitely going to lower their percentage at actually making the playoffs. So I feel like outside of the three spots that already, clinched, Shock are a given. I mean, they're practically 100%. Philadelphia is a given. Atlanta's a given. Dallas, I favor to take that spot. So for me, you look at Charge Titans. Titans should be able to win that. But who knows? Maybe something is there with the triple DPS and Charge are going to surprise people. But I feel like at the end of the day, that Dynasty Spitfire game is going to determine that 8th and final spot. And outside of that, I don't see that much movement outside of Charge falling out of contention. So Charge going to be out. London, I hate to say it, are probably going to beat Seoul because I've seen this. I've been on this roller coaster one too many times to know that London is a better team than Seoul, and it dates all the way back to Overwatch Apex when, Lunatic High had lost, at the time it was like 16 consecutive maps, something crazy, and, Fissure had kind of already played for London, and they will kind of know how to play against them. I think it'll be close, but I'm still going to give the nod to Spitfire squeaking their way into the playoffs here.
Yeah, and the nice thing is the Titans Charge matchup. The thing that kind of, because I mean, in all honesty, both Spitfire and Seoul could miss out on the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They could. The last matchup of the week is going to decide the last spot in the playoffs. Right. Whether the Titans win, like the last match is going to decide who's in first place. It's going to decide who's the number 1 seed, who's the number 8 seed. Like plain and simple. That matchup, you couldn't ask for a better matchup, really. I wish the Overwatch League could rearrange some of this stuff and make for like a more interesting Sunday. Mm-hmm. Like, how about the second to last match be the Spitfire versus Seoul? Like, it doesn't really affect much because you can switch stuff around. Like, switch. It'd be a little hard. They could probably make it work, but like, you want to make like the NFL does this all the time. You can flex games to a more intriguing spot to get more viewership. Like, if you could do a Sunday where you're like, all right, these last two matches of the day are going to decide who's going to the playoffs. You're going to get more viewers instead of being like, okay, well, the Washington Justice play, then a playoff game is going to happen, and then, a semi-okay game is going to happen, and then we go to Sunday, and you know what I mean? So I wish they could flex games to make things more interesting for the viewers, but that's a very minor thing. I do agree with you that Dallas is getting the nod over me, nod with me over like the win because of the somber play that we didn't really know RCK had. And part of me wishes that they would have held on to it until this week, and then just sprung it on Boston to really just be like, you know what? No, we know your weakness is Sombra. We're going to surprise you with our Sombra play, and then really dominate that way. I don't think I think the Titans will come in, and I'm calling 4-0 on for the Titans versus the Charge. I think that they just want to come in and be like, no, we want the number 1 seed. We know what we have to do. We're just going to destroy them. And then, the Spitfire over Seoul. I mean, Seoul is in shambles right now. They don't know who they're starting. They don't know what's going on. It's a roller coaster. Like you said, like, puns aside, like, it's so hard being a fan of the Seoul Dynasty because you never know what to expect. 1 week you have a team that could beat New York Excelsior. The next week, you have a team that can't beat the Florida Mayhem.
Right.
And it's the same roster. Like, it's infuriating.
If you're sold, you just need to win. Yeah. Your spot. That's all it takes.
Yeah, you win, you're in.
Unless the Charge win. I mean,
unless the Charge win. But, like, you're kind of coming into this game, like, whoever wins this is going to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, it will be an interesting last week.
Absolutely.
Especially with only matches being on Saturday and Sunday, no Thursday, Friday games.
Yeah, that's important to note. And what I love about this, too, is the fact that going into this current week, there are 5 teams right now that are 500. There's 5 teams that are 3-3. Charger kind of leading the pack there, who are currently in that 8th position with a +3 map differential. And it just comes to show, like, the level of parity that we have seen already this season has been ridiculous, at the point where we have 16 of the 20 teams that basically have beaten another team, who have beaten another team, and then it's just a whole circle outside of the teams that haven't won a game, and then, the teams that haven't lost the game. So, not including that are obviously New York, Vancouver, LA Valiant, and Washington Justice, but it's just like, it's so surreal to kind of to see how this has all been laid out. And that's what has been making the rankings so weird this season.
Oh God, it's been infuriating.
And with the pickups to some extent too, because we always talk about like the any given Sunday mentality, and we've never been at a point in the Overwatch League where that feels like it is 100% accurate that it is right now.
Yeah. It's out of this world. Like we kind of have talked up the Gladiators on this show, but like here's a very telling stat of theirs. They're 3-4, so they're in 13th place right now. Mm-hmm. They have a losing record. They have a positive map differential. Like that's unique. Mm-hmm. They've lost more games than they've won, but they've won more maps than they've lost. Like, I know it can happen, but really? Like, really? So it's just one of those things where that's like the epitome of like an infuriating season of, rankings, pick'ems. That's what I'm blaming my crap pick'em scores on. Not me picking them. It's their fault, not mine. I'm blaming them because I'm doing good in standard and I'm doing good in unlimited, but I'm not doing good in pick'em.
You're not doing good with Bob.
And me and Bob's team is not the best right now. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna excel stage 2 once main tanks,
you
healers
haven't hit the justice low yet.
We have not. But once main healers come around, we're golden.
Mm-hmm.
And soon. But we got Jinmu. We got my boy Jinmu on the team. But yeah, no, it's so infuriating. And the thing is it's not going to get any better because next stage, like, this is why it's so hard, is every stage is going to have a different meta. Right. And you have zero idea how it's going to screw with things. Like, Dallas Fuel, trash the first 3 stages. Meta changes, playoffs. What?
Yeah, like, run Brig 80% of the time, like 60% more than every other team in the league on average, and then right in.
Yeah, it's one of those things where any stage can be, you could hit that rare, like, okay, the meta is the Washington Justices, every single one of their players' best heroes, and they're like, yep, we went undefeated. Like, now granted, that won't happen.
Example.
For example, there's like a 0.5 chance of that, but there's still a chance.
So like the Paris Eternal playoff potential.
Yeah. I mean, even look at it as, oh God, I just had the perfect example. I was going to say Outlaws, but they've always been bad.
Payload is your best healer.
Boston, yeah. The Payload is Houston's best healer. It is. If you are a Houston fan and you play fantasy, I would write into Soul Drink on highnoon.gg and be like, can you add the Payload as a free agent pickup? He'll do better. But no, I was going to say Boston. Like, Boston Uprising, they just hit the right meta, and then they went undefeated in a stage.
Right.
And then the next stage, meta changed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a couple of other aspects of He Who Must Not Be Named, but, that's how different it can be. Like, we can guess all we want, but we're guessing, like, stage by stage. Like you said, the Titans, one of their weaknesses was shown this week with the Hunters when people went all DPS against them. Well, what happens next stage if the meta is 4 DPS?
Right.
Are the Titans going to be bottom 5 team because they just can't adapt? I mean, you just don't know. So it's infuriating and interesting at the same time.
Absolutely. So with that being said, Ed, I know we are getting to that 2-hour mark here in just a matter of minutes, so let's go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for ways to improve the show to make for a better listen experience out there. Just as a reminder, we are celebrating our 3-year anniversary, which is 2 days from now, actually. And with that, we are doing a giveaway. All the details are on our Twitter at HND Overwatch. But we are giving away some Overwatch League tokens. We're giving out 3 bundles of the 400. So all I have to do is make sure you retweet the tweet that is on our timeline, and make sure that you follow that account. You'll be entered, and we'll be drawing winners here. I think I said on Monday, like the 18th. So be sure to enter that. Maybe you can win and get some new pink and blue skins for Honcho Spark, or maybe be one of the few people to support Washington. Your choice.
No, if you're a Washington fan and you win, you don't get the prize. Can I call that now? Am I allowed? Do I have the sway to do that?
No, you don't.
Dang it. So I'm not allowed to exclude Washington fans, and I'm not allowed to win it myself. I'm going to create a fake Twitter account. I'm going to do that and be like, at not Edinar wins. And you're going to be like, none the wiser.
Moving on, we do have Overwatch Recall, which is our hub of Overwatch content, whether it's Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League, all that good stuff that is available on our website. And then we have episodic listens released every Sunday night. So keep up to date with all the latest on that Twitter at OW Recall. And we just, as I mentioned, I want to say it was last week. I interviewed Snowy from the Weekly Uprising. I also was interviewed by him for the Weekly Uprising, so that was kind of an interesting thing going back and forth there. But definitely check it out. If you guys want to support us further, you can do so by pledging to us on Patreon. So we have tiers starting at just $1 a month, and more information can be found at www.patreon.com/OWL Network. And I gotta do a special shout out to a name that most of our listeners have probably heard, at least on our network, and that's the Blazing Bob, who actually became our latest person to pledge on Patreon. So Bob, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping the lights on. Your support is greatly appreciated. And, we are always looking for insight on the tiers as well. So, if there's anything specifically that you guys might want to see, or maybe something that you are on the fence about joining that could sway you, we are always open ears when it comes to that sort of feedback as well. But Ed, we do have a number of ways how our listeners can get a hold of us. So why don't you let them know how they can do that?
All right. Well, you can contact the show through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We do have a website. The website is owlnshow.com, so come over there. We are on YouTube, and the YouTube is youtube.com/c/Overwatch League Network. We are on Discord. We've actually been getting a lot of people joining the Discord lately, which is nice. So come join us over there at discord.me/OWLNshow. We are streaming presently live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We are a Twitch affiliate, so come help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. We do stream pretty regularly. Monday nights, we have the Overwatch League Network is at 7 p.m. Pacific with Totem, Spider, and Slambo. Most of the time? Some of the time?
Hey, he's doing better.
He is doing a lot better now that he's not traveling so much for work. So, but then it's hard because you'll have Slambo, but then not Spider.
Mm-hmm.
So
not Spider and then not Slambo.
Exactly.
But I'm always there.
Yeah, Totem's always there unless he's deathly ill. Then he's just in the Twitch chat harassing Slambo and Spider, which has happened. On Tuesdays, we air what is honestly one of my favorite parts of the week. We have OWL by the Numbers at 6 p.m. Pacific, and that is our fantasy Overwatch podcast. I love that show because I'm doing amazing and I can talk trash to all my co-hosts who are losing to me. And then on Wednesdays, we have this show, Heroes Never Die, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. Host streams are kind of not happening right now while the Overwatch League Network is going on. Every once in a while, Spider will do a stream on Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but once the Overwatch League has bye weeks and stuff like that or is over, we'll start that up again. Totem went over our Patreon already, so go over there if you can donate to us. That'd be amazing. And you can contact me personally on Twitter at Edanar Overwatch. That's EDANAR Overwatch. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TotemlyDrunkCTR. And of course, if I'm live on Twitch, it's here 3 days a week, Monday through Wednesday, podcasting, just do what we do for the past 3 years. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much again for hanging out tonight on Heroes Never Die. Again, this has been episode number 151. I am your host, Tumbly Junk, joined, as per usual, by my co-host, Edanar, and we will see you guys back next week. Have a good night.
See ya.